Hey guys, Prowl 1701 here, and today we're going to talk about some Doctor Who. And recently I asked, what is your least favorite story from each season of classic Doctor Who, and a video asking about Modern Who as well. So today we're going to talk about your favorite story. So what is your favorite story from each season of classic Doctor Who? Not necessarily the one you think is the best, so not the one you would say is the objective best, just the one that is your personal favorite. Now, luckily, this isn't an Armageddon situation where you're having to save one for posterity or you're having to save just one to take down to the bunker with you and watch. So it's not one of those It's Armageddon scenarios where you have to be in a situation where this is either the only one you can ever watch again or the only one humanity can ever watch again. This is just honestly me simply asking, what is your favorite story from each season of classic Doctor Who? Which is really, some seasons especially, this is very hard because there's some of the seasons just have so many stories I like. Season 1, for example, is a perfect start on that because it's really hard for me to pick between The Keys of Marinus and The Reign of Terror. I love those stories, which there's other good Season 1 stories. I like An Unearthly Child. I like The Aztecs. Matter of fact, I like most of Season 1. But The Reign of Terror and The Keys of Marinus are my two favorites. And honestly, I flip back and forth on them. I mean, I've only watched The Keys of Marinus once. I probably do need to rewatch it. Whereas The Reign of Terror, I've probably seen, I'd say at least 4 times. I actually own it on DVD now. One of my subscribers sent it, which I very much appreciate. And I like the animation for episodes 4 and 5 for the most part. There's some wonky camera stuff in there, but I like the animation style and the likenesses. So it's really hard for me to pick between those two. If you ask me on some days, I'm going to say The Keys of Marinus. If you ask me on another day, I'm going to say The Reign of Terror. So I flip back and forth on those. Season 2 is also really hard because I love Season 2. I think it's Hartnell's best season. There's so many good stories. Most of the stories are good. Really, the only weak stories for me are The Web Planet, as much as I respect the ambition behind it, and The Chase, which still has some good bookending episodes. But the rest of the stories I like to one degree or another. Planet of Giants is very underrated. Dalek Invasion of Earth, of course, is fantastic. The Crusade is good, but would be better if it was complete. But the big three for me are The Rescue, which I really enjoy. I just love the relationship between the First Doctor and Vicky and how fast they kind of connect together, even just in that story. And then The Romans, which you guys know I love The Romans. It's one of my favorite Hartnell stories. It's just so hilarious. The guy playing Nero is just perfectly cast as that version of Nero, that very comedic, childish version of Nero. It's just perfect casting. And then Hartnell himself just seems like he's having such a ball in that story. He's having so much fun. And then I love the cinematography with Ian Russell when he's sword fighting. It's just a really fun story. And then, of course, you have The Time Meddler, which is also really fun. Love Peter Buttersworth as the monk. Love the rapport him and the First Doctor have, actors and characters. Like everything going on there. It's really hard for me to pick between those three, especially between The Romans and The Time Meddler. I would probably say The Time Meddler, but The Romans is right behind it. Those are two of my top 2 Hartnell stories. So I'd probably pick The Time Meddler for Season 2, with The Romans like holding onto its leg like, hold up! Season 3 is definitely the weakest Hartnell season for me, probably just because of so many missing episodes and lack of telesnaps for a lot of those episodes. The John Wiles era really hurts not having those telesnaps. I would probably say it's between The Ark, which I'm very fond of, and Galaxy 4, because I always support any story where the main message is beware of attractive blondes. They're dangerous. Don't trust them. That's a story. That's a lesson I can get behind and be like, They should have had a G.I. Joe PSA about that. Watch out with that cupcake, Johnny. It's a blonde-headed lady handing you that cupcake. Knowing is half the battle. You guys know how I am about Galaxy 4. I love Galaxy 4. But I like The Ark a lot, too. Plus, having the actual story complete. Of course, The War Machines is a strong contender, as it's a good story. I do prefer The Ark over it. I would probably say The Ark is my favorite, with Galaxy 4 coming a close second. I really like the animation for Galaxy 4 a lot. Season 4 is very difficult. I mean, I know the answer. It's Power of the Daleks, but it's hard for me to pick just one, just because I love Season 4. It's my favorite 60s season. It's one of my favorite seasons of Doctor Who. It's got so many good stories. But especially stuff like the Macroterra, the animation just elevates the Macroterra's original materials so much more. Evil of the Daleks, which I don't watch as much as I should. I need to go back and do a rewatch of Evil of the Daleks. Evil of the Daleks is kind of like Resolution. Really good episode. I just don't go back to it for some reason. I need to rewatch Evil sometime. But Power of the Daleks definitely wins for me. I love Power of the Daleks. One of the best post-regeneration stories. One of the best Dalek stories. One of the best 60s stories. It's just good Doctor Who. And the special edition animation of it looks pretty good. I think it's a nice leap over the original animation, the 2016 animation. So a really strong season. But Power wins for me. Season 5 is a little harder because the quality of the stories in Season 5, not in how they're objectively written, but in how they appeal to me, is such a step down from a lot of Season 4. And I know some of you are looking at the screen going, I don't mean objectively. Some of the stories for Season 5 are still very well written. Just for some reason, they don't reach out and grab me as much as some of the stuff in Season 4. It's really hard because I don't know if there's very few stories, if any, in Season 5 that just reach out and grab me and get me excited about the way some of the stories in Season 4 do. Like The Smugglers, which I really enjoy. Even though I haven't actually watched the recon of The Smugglers, I love the novelization of it. Power of the Daleks, The Highlanders, Underwater Menace, which I enjoy. Even if the story is not objectively good, I enjoyed my one watch through of it. Macroterra, which you guys know I like. Now, there's definitely some strong stories there that are well written. I mean, The Web of Fear, phenomenally written, well filmed. Wish it was complete. Glad it's almost complete. I really like The Web of Fear. I still somehow feel like it's a little overrated. I don't know why. Because it's very well made. And that's the one I would probably pick for my favorite of the season, is The Web of Fear. But the fact that I don't connect with Web of Fear on the same excitement level that I do Macroterror or Power of the Daleks is very telling if that's my favorite of the season. I like Tomb of the Cybermen. I think it's very overrated because it's one of the rare complete Troughton stories and the only 60s complete Cybermen story. Abominable Snowmen I like a lot, and I enjoyed the animation, and that one's definitely a contender for one of my favorites of the season. And sometimes I would actually probably rank Abominable Snowmen over Web of Fear. It's actually weird on that one. It would depend on my mood. Ice Warriors I'm not the biggest fan of. It's not bad. It just kind of plods along a bit. Fury from the Deep probably has the best story of the season. I love Fury's story, but it's kind of the inverse of Macroterra, whereas Macroterra has a B-level story, but the animation really elevates it and makes it one of my favorite Troughton stories. I love that animation. It's the opposite with Fury from the Deep. Fury from the Deep has a phenomenally good story with an animation that just makes it unwatchable for me, like almost completely unwatchable. I have a hard time trying to watch Fury from the Deep because the animation just pisses me off and infuriates me. And I'm not trying to be offensive to the people who animated it. I understand the lack of budget, and the fact they were on a time constraint, I think, really hurt this one. If they had had another 6 months to work on it, I think it would have been a much better end product. Although some of the stylistic choices I don't agree with either. But the fact that they also did the Galaxy 4 animation, which I really like, and the Abominable Snowmen animation, which I also really like, shows that if they could have had more time on this one and they'd made a couple of different creative choices, like enlarging the areas, I think that was a mistake. Takes away the claustrophobic nature of the story. I think you could have had a really good animation here, but because of that, it pulls the story down for me. And then Wheel in Space is just... Season 5 is a big disappointment coming off Season 4 for me as a whole. So I would probably say either Abominable Snowmen or The Web of Fear. Those are definitely my two favorites of the season. Season 6, it's really hard to pick between the War Games and the Invasion. I would probably pick the War Games, but the Invasion's a strong second. Season 6 is a bit of a mixed bag because the Dominators is not very good. I think Seeds of Death is okay, kind of middle of the road, better than the Ice Warriors. I like the Crotons a lot. I love the Invasion, and I love the War Games. And then the Space Pirates Recon just being a huge chore to get through due to the lack of telesnaps. The novelization's a good read. So I would say my favorite would be the War Games, followed very closely by the Invasion. Moving into season 7, it's Inferno. It's just Inferno. You guys know how much I love Inferno. I'm not going to go into a big thing about it. I've talked about Inferno a million times on the channel. It's one of my top 10 favorite Doctor Who stories of all time. The second Doctor Who story I ever owned physically, and one of the ones I have earliest memories of watching. I love Inferno. 7 episodes that are perfectly balanced. There's no filler. It just feels perfectly balanced, and I love it. Season 8, The Mind of Evil. I like The Mind of Evil a lot. If there's any season 8 story that feels like it belongs in season 7, it's The Mind of Evil. It has that kind of darker tone to it that season 7 has. I feel like Mind of Evil really has that. Also, it's written by the same guy who wrote Inferno. I love Inferno. I just like this guy's writing. I think this is the only 2 stories he wrote for Doctor Who, and I think that's a shame because I love his writing for Doctor Who. I do wish the color restoration on it looked a little better. It is the weakest color restoration from season 8, in my opinion. But considering all of the circumstances surrounding trying to get that one colorized, the fact we have it in color at all is a miracle, and I'm grateful to everyone involved for that. It's still perfectly watchable and a great story. As much as I enjoy most of the season, I'm not the biggest fan of Claws of Axos, but it's fine. I like Terror of the Autons. I like Colony in Space more than most. And while I'm not as into the Daemons the way some people are, I still admit that it's objectively a good story. Season 9, Day of the Daleks. I love Day of the Daleks. It's one of my favorite Dalek stories, especially the special edition with the updated effects. Sometimes they go a little overboard with the special effects. I'll admit some of the special effects in it didn't quite need special effects, but I still prefer it over the original version. It's still my favorite story of the season. It's nice to see the Daleks back. The special edition does some great Daleks voice work as well. Even though I find season 9 as a whole underrated, I don't think there's any bad stories in it. I like all of them to one degree or another, even if some of them I've only seen once. The Mutants and the Time Monster. Those are going to be due a rewatch at some point. But Day of the Daleks wins for me. Season 10 is very difficult. I would probably say the 3 Doctors. Well, I know it's the 3 Doctors. It's just hard to limit it to just one because I like season 10 a lot. It's a very strong season, but I love the 3 Doctors. It's so much fun. It's my favorite multi-Doctor story. I love just how the 3rd Doctor and 2nd Doctor get along on screen. It's kind of like seeing the origins of the mock Pertwee Troughton feud that they kept up at conventions. That's always so adorable to hear stories about. That it kind of started here, and I absolutely love that. Season 11, The Time Warrior. Season 11 is a strong season. I think it's probably Pertwee's most underrated season, because I don't think it has any bad stories. I think the weakest is probably Planet of the Spiders, because I feel like the 3rd Doctor deserved a slightly better send-off. Monsters of Peladon gets points because it's one of the best written stories for Sarah Jane. Sarah Jane's written so well in it that it really elevates it for me. Death to the Daleks I enjoy. Invasion of the Dinosaurs is a very good story. But Time Warrior is just good for me. I like it. It's a great introduction for Sarah Jane. She gets a lot to do here. I love how well she's written in it. It's the introduction of the Sontarans. Probably the best Sontaran story we've still ever gotten. It is, of course, written by the legendary Robert Holmes. You guys know I love me some Bob Holmes, the best writer the show has ever had. And it's really the 3rd Doctor's only historical, which I like. Plus, it's just cast really well. I like some of the guest cast in this a lot. Season 12, gotta go with personal favorite. That's hard. I was about to say Genesis, but I love Robot a lot. That's really hard. Objectively, gotta be Genesis. Subjectively, it depends on my mood. Because I love Season 12. It's one of my 2 favorite seasons in all of Doctor Who. Because you guys know I love Revenge of the Cybermen. I think Sontaran Experiment's good. Genesis is Genesis. Ark in Space is a classic. But I love Robot. Robot is so much fun for me. This one, my favorite, jumps around. Because sometimes it is Robot. Sometimes it is Robot. I love Robot so much. It's my favorite post-regeneration story. I don't think it's objectively the best post-regeneration story, but it's my personal favorite post-regeneration story. And then other times, I would say Genesis. Because Genesis is just Genesis. Season 13, Pyramids of Mars. Again, such a strong season. My other favorite Doctor Who season of all time. Just banger after banger after banger after banger. No bad stories in this one. All stories. There's not any even just good stories in this one. Every story in this season is great. At least great. If not masterpiece level, then great. Android Invasion is great. Brain of Morbius is great, which are the two weakest for me. After that, you're stumbling into practically masterpiece. Terror of the Zygons is really good. Planet of Evil is really good. Seeds of Doom is amazing. And then Pyramids of Mars is just one of the greatest Doctor Who stories of all time. I absolutely love Pyramids of Mars and how the Doctor solves everything at the end by sending Sutekh forward into his death, which is my canon, and I'm sticking to it. Season 14, which to me is a step down from Season 13. But the answer is easy for me here. It's got to be Talons. I love Talons. I do think, as much as I prefer Season 13 over 14 overall, I think Season 14 does have Tom Baker's best season finale. That is the Talons of Wing Chiang. I love this story. I love the location work. I love the night shooting. I love Tom's Sherlock Holmes outfit. I love the guest cast. I just love everything about this story. I love the kind of Phantom of the Opera nature to it. Season 14 is such a mixed bag for me. It's got underrated stories. It's got overrated stories. It's got stories that definitely don't get enough attention, like Mask of Mandragora and Face of Evil. But then you have stories that I get annoyed hearing people talk. Well, not annoyed. I don't get annoyed. That's not fair. I get tired of hearing people talk about how good they are sometimes, like Robots of Death and Deadly Assassin, when I feel like those are good stories, but I feel like they get more credit than they deserve, for me personally, just subjectively. And then Hand of Fear is just kind of, to me, the big miss and whiff of the season, simply because, swing and a miss of the season, just because episode 4, it kind of falls apart. Season 15, Horror of Fang Rock, I think a lot of you will probably say the same thing. It's not that it's the only good story. There's good stories in Season 15. I love the Sunmakers. Image of the Fendal is good. Underworld's vastly underrated. I'm not a big fan of The Invisible Enemy. And The Invasion of Time's a bit of a letdown. But Horror of Fang Rock to me is just the stone cold classic favorite of the season. Easily my favorite to go back to. And I especially love the updated effects on the box set. Season 16, Pirate Planet. It's really close with the Rebus Operation. I love the Rebus Operation a lot too. It's Bob Holmes. Really good story. But Pirate Planet wins for me. I love Douglas Adams' style of humor. I think it mixes well with the Fourth Doctor. It just seems like Tom Baker and Douglas just seem to click really well. I enjoy that story. It's a lot of fun to watch. I did need some updated effects. Pirate Planet needs some updated effects. But other than that, it's practically perfect for me. And I enjoy a lot of the rest of the season. I like Stones of Blood. I like Androids of Tara. How much I like it depends on my most recent viewing. I kind of jump around on that one. I think Armageddon Factor is underrated. I think it's good. I don't necessarily think it's great, but I think it's good. Could also use some updated effects. And then, of course, you guys know I'm not overly fond of Kroll. I hope they don't waste the updated effects on Kroll. Or if Kroll gets updated effects, I hope something else gets updated effects too. I hope if Kroll's getting updated effects, I need a second story with updated effects for Season 16. Give me Pirate Planet. Give me Pirate Planet. But yeah, Pirate Planet wins that one for me. Season 17... City of Death, easily, again, one of my top 10 favorite Doctor Who stories of all time. I love City of Death. As much as I enjoy Season 17 as a whole, I do. I like all the stories in it to one degree or another. It's a fun season. City of Death's the easy win for me, though. Season 18, State of Decay. Even though State of Decay doesn't quite slot us into this season as well as the other stories, it is, of course, a holdover story from a previous season. But I love State of Decay. I just love it. Everything about it. I've talked about it before. It's easily the winner for me. I like most of the stories this season. Warrior's Gate is another good standout for me. I love how well it's executed on screen. Keeper of Traken as well is a good standout. But State of Decay is definitely the winner for me. Season 19 is a little tricky. You have some very strong stories in Season 19 and then some very not strong stories in Season 19. Castrovalva wins for me, though. Castrovalva is one of my favorite Fifth Doctor stories, possibly my favorite, but definitely one of them. I just love Castrovalva a lot, especially with the updated effects on the box set. Really just pushes it into that 10 out of 10 range or close to it for me. I really like Castrovalva a lot. Earthshock is a strong contender, of course. A lot of you will probably say Earthshock. And I also really like Four to Doomsday. Fort of Doomsday, for me, is a very underrated story for the season. I enjoy it. And The Visitation is really good as well. Love the location work on The Visitation. Looks really good in true HD. Season 20 is easily my favorite Davison season. I don't dislike any stories in it. I would say the Five Doctors, because I count the Five Doctors as part of season 20. So counting the Five Doctors, I would say the Five Doctors. I love the Five Doctors. It's one of my favorite multi-doctor stories. It's a lot of fun. I especially love that we now have 3 different versions of it, with the original broadcast version, the 90s version, and the 40th anniversary version, because I like all 3 versions. Now, if we're not counting the Five Doctors, I might have to think on that for a second. It probably depends on my mood. Sometimes I would say Enlightenment. Sometimes I would say King's Demons. I actually really like King's Demons a lot. A 2-parter that knows it only needs to be a 2-parter. As much as I don't like Chameleon, he's not utilized in the story as much, at least as Chameleon. I really like King's Demons, with Enlightenment being right behind it. My last couple watchings of Enlightenment haven't wowed me as much. I think my favorite version of Enlightenment, oddly enough, call me weird here, is the 2009 special edition, the movie-length edit in the widescreen. I don't like the widescreen, but I really like the CGI shots from the 2009 DVD better than I do the other effects, even though those look good. The original 80s effects look good for it, and the 2023 effects look good for it. But I just, for some reason, I tend to like, maybe it's because that's the version of it I watched first, I think. Definitely the first one I'd watched in a long time. Yeah, I think that was the first time I watched Enlightenment, actually. I think I watched it with the updated effects first. For whatever reason, that's typically my favorite version of Enlightenment. I guess it just trims the fat, so to speak, on it. Season 21, Caves of Androzani. I mean, it's just got to be Caves of Androzani. There's some good stories that season, with Resurrection of the Daleks, my favorite 80s Dalek story. Frontios is also really good as well. But I would definitely have to say Caves of Androzani. What a masterpiece of a Doctor Who story it is. Season 22 is also really tricky because I like all of Season 22. Season 22 is a very underrated season. I'm not a big fan of Perry, to be honest. Nothing against Nicola. Just not a big fan of Perry. Also, I don't care for that American accent at all. I would probably pick Mark of the Rani, but I like all the stories. Attack of the Cybermen is so good. I even prefer it over Earthshock. Vengeance is good. I even enjoy Time Lash, just because, 1, I love watching Paul Darrow chewing the scenery, and 2, I like the updated effects on the box set for Time Lash. Revelation of the Daleks is good, and The Two Doctors is a lot of fun. It's overly long, but it's nice having Troutman Fraser Hines back. But Mark of the Rani is probably my favorite of the season. Again, Colin's only historical, and I just absolutely love the Rani in this. She's she's so much fun in this, and you can really tell how she's a different kind of Time Lord villain than the Master is. Whereas she's more brain than brawn, whereas the Master is a different kind of brain and also brawn. It's a really good story with some really good incidental music, and I really like the location shooting as well for it. Season 23, The Mysterious Planet, which I just recently rewatched and reviewed as a Patreon request. One of my patrons, Simon, who sent me the Season 23 box set. Matter of fact, he sent me 3 out of these 4 standard editions. He had requested that I review it, and I just did review that. My favorite of the season. Good story. Also good incidental music. Written by the always amazing Robert Holmes. I had a lot of fun rewatching that, as I always do. I love Glitz. I love Tony as Glitz. Tony is so good in that role. I would wish we could have had Tony back in the modern series as Glitz. I would have loved that. I was very sad when I learned Tony had passed away, because that was only, what, a couple years ago, I think Tony passed away? It wasn't like a long, long time ago. Season 24, Paradise Towers. Paradise Towers really feels like it belongs in Season 25 to me. Just with the more adult nature of that story, it really feels like it feels like it's part of Season 25. I have to remind myself it's part of Season 24. It's kind of like a sneak peek of what Season 25 is going to look like to me. I loved that story and the adult subject matter of it and just how dark that story actually gets if you're paying attention. You don't even really have to pay attention that well to see how dark that story is. I mean, I enjoy season 24 as a whole for the most part. I mean, I don't care for Delta and the Bannerman, but I like Time and the Ronnie, and of course I like Dragonfire. I think the story's underrated. I mean, the season's underrated, but Paradise Towers is kind of the shining jewel of it for me. Season 25, Happiness Patrol is my favorite. I love Happiness Patrol, the original version and the special edition. Whereas most special editions or most stories with the updated effects, it's really just the main difference is you're watching the same story with better looking effects. The interesting thing about the Happiness Patrol is the special edition actually gives it a slightly different feel to it. It's like I've said before when I watch the Macroterra. Sometimes I watch it in color, sometimes I watch it in black and white, and it does this unique thing where they feel like different viewing experiences. I don't have a preference for one over the other when I'm watching Macroterra. Sometimes I prefer the color version, sometimes I prefer the black and white version, but they do impact me differently. I do get a different feeling from watching which version I'm watching. It just depends on which version I'm watching. But I like that. I don't have a preference between them. It's just which one I'm in the mood to watch. It's the same thing with the Happiness Patrol. The special edition of it versus the original version of Happiness Patrol, I just get slightly different feelings from them. They impact me differently. It's a bit different from, say, The Five Doctors or Day of the Daleks, where I feel like I'm just watching the same story, just, you know, the effects look different. Whereas here, they're impacting me slightly differently. And again, I don't have a preference over which one I like better. I like both. Whereas, like, say, Remembrance of the Daleks, I much prefer the special edition because it's not... I'm getting the same impact from it. It just feels like Remembrance of the Daleks with updated effects. And the updated effects version will probably be my default version from now on because I love those updated laser blast. You know Prowley likes his updated laser blast. With the Happiness Patrol, I can see myself watching the original version sometimes. And it's neat because I can watch the original version, I can watch the special edition, or I can watch the broadcast original version with updated effects. I haven't done that. I'll do that at some point and see what I think of that. So it's neat to have so many different options for watching the Happiness Patrol, which is a story I very much like. I love that. That is how you do political satire, an art that seems lost these days. I heard The Boys tried to do it and failed at it miserably. But I don't watch The Boys either. But that's what I've been told. This is how you do satire. The rest of the season is fine. I mean, Greatest Show in the Galaxy, I'm not the biggest fan of, but the back half of it is much better than the front half. I like Silver Nemesis a lot. I think it's an underrated story. It's a little crowded, and I do want to watch the omnibus version of it sometime and review it. I haven't done that yet. I need to do that. But I like it. And then, of course, Remembrance is fantastic. Season 26, I would probably say Curse of Fenric, narrowly edging out Ghostlight. Those are the two strong ones for me, and two of the strongest stories from the McCoy era as a whole. I love Ghostlight. It just has this wonderful atmosphere and feel to it. But I also love Curse of Fenric. It's kind of the quintessential McCoy story for me. It and Remembrance are kind of the two quintessential McCoy stories. If you can only watch two McCoy stories, those are the two I think you should watch. It's a lot of fun. I love the makeup on the Hemivores. I like the girls when they get changed. Come play with us. That soldier was dumb. I wouldn't have gone anywhere near that water. Look at those claws. I'd be like, pass. Hard pass. I mean, y'all aren't blind, so y'all could be okay. But still, hard pass. I love Curse of Fenric a lot. It's really well cast as well. Such good cast, such good location work, such good studio work. And I still enjoy the other stories this season as well. I do like Survival, even if I think it's a bit overrated. And I do like Battlefield, even though it's got its own flaws. But Curse of Fenric wins for me. So that's me talking about my favorite stories from each season of classic Doctor Who. I want to know what you think of my choices. I want to know what stories you would pick and which seasons were kind of hard for you to pick. Like I said, especially like Season 1, Reign of Terror, Keys of Marinus. It's a hard pick. I want to know if there were any seasons where you had to stop and go, Comment down below. Let's talk about it. Don't forget to click the like button and the subscribe button. I also have a P.O. box if there's anything you would like to send me to look at and review. That's how I've gotten these wonderful standard edition sets, as Simon has been sending me those, which I appreciate. So if there's anything you want to send me to look at and do a review of. I also do have a wish list on Amazon. I have a link to my Amazon wish list down there. I also have a link to my Amazon UK wish list down there as well. If there's anything you'd like to send me from that to look at and review. I have a Patreon. If you would like to support me on that, there is a link to that down there as well. I want to give a shout out to Colin Coney and Sam Venning, two of my top tier patrons. I appreciate their support, as I do the support of all of my patrons and both of my YouTube members. Y'all are all very much appreciated. Most importantly, thank you for watching.